So there's this scene in The Brothers Karamazov by my husband Fyodor Dostoevsky that I think about kind of a lot. And it's in a pretty famous chapter. It's in Rebellion. I think that's probably one of the most famous chapters out of the book, besides like the Grand Inquisitor and I think like the Devil maybe, which is towards the end. I think I haven't read it in a while. It's a really hard-hitting chapter, and it's a very, Dostoevsky likes to get into it, as we all know. And so it's primarily a conversation between Ivan and Alyosha. And Ivan, as part of the kind of point he's proving or argument he's making during this conversation, kind of gets into some very graphic, long drawn out story that involves the abuse of a child. And like halfway through kind of this spiel that he's going on, he just like kind of stops and looks at his brother Alyosha, and he's like, oh, like, is this too much for you? Like, do I need to, like, do you want me to just stop? Like, is it getting to be too much? If you don't want to hear it, I'll just stop talking. And Alyosha, he just looks at him and he says, like, no, don't stop, keep going, because I want to suffer too. And why am I talking about this? You might ask. So it's kind of like leading to this kind of rambling discussion I kind of wanted to have. I don't know. I'm not going to be doing an April wrap up because stuff. Miles, if you're watching this, I'm currently reading Kafka on the Shore. I've not really been reading a lot of like new stuff. I'm kind of dabbling and also kind of like in a slow reading phase where I don't really feel like rushing. Instead of doing a wrap up, I kind of wanted to have this kind of discussion. My thoughts are not really put out very well. I'm just going to kind of talk off the top of my head here. Join the discussion if you want. Don't if you don't want to. It's completely up to you. I will be biting off of some thoughts. I kind of touched on this slightly in the beginning of my last like Life is Sad, but at least we have books video, and I had some interesting comments. So I'll be biting off, particularly Christian said some interesting stuff. Anyway, but I had started off my last video talking about books as a form of escapism, and I wanted to really like dissect why I specifically, but I feel like a lot of people choose to read things that are so thematically heavy when reading is like a love, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a love of mine. Like books are like a true love of mine in this world, and they bring me joy. And I was just trying to reconcile like how this thing that like brings me so much joy and like good feelings also can be kind of masochistic, you know what I'm saying, because of the things that I think a lot of people choose to read, which I said are like very thematically heavy. I was just thinking about certain things like my favorite books, and one day I will make a video about my favorite books. I just haven't mustered up the courage to do it yet. They're depressing. Like a lot of my favorite books are like very depressing, and I literally have no thoughts in my head right now. This is, y'all are gonna have to bear with me. Why we read what we read, and this kind of discussion of pain versus joy in literature, and I meant in art in general, you know. I think subconsciously, like a while ago, I kind of caught myself in the act of feeling like the sadder a book is, the more emotional hell that the book puts me through, you know, the harder I cry, the more I'm like torn apart by it, the deeper it is, which is completely untrue. And I didn't really think this thought actively. I feel like I just kind of saw it like kind of slowly creeping up into, I don't know, like what I was looking for to read and stuff like that. And I remember, I don't know if y'all know about the app Likewise. Before, when the app first came out, it was really good because I feel like there was a large variety of readers on there and like art consumers. Like it's kind of like a recommendation app where you can like ask recommendations from like large groups of strangers, and they have like a book section and a movie section and all these type of different sections, when it first came out, I felt like it was really more diverse. And then they sponsored like a whole bunch of really big booktubers, which, you know, no shame to them, but a lot of them have a very like singular taste in literature, and a lot of them cater to like more YA stuff, which I really do like YA. I just like to expand my reading tastes a little bit more outside of YA. And so I feel like a very specific crowd got on the app, and now like you really can't get the diverse answers that I was able to get on there before. Like I used to go on there and ask like for specific recommendations, and I would get such a variety of people talking, but now it's like no joke, I swear, it's just like a whole bunch of like, I don't want to sound rude right now, but it's like low-key like a whole bunch of 14-year-olds asking for like enemies to lovers recommendations. Which, you know, if y'all have a good enemies to lovers, you know, link it down below. I just feel like they ask the same question over and over again, and you can't really find the niche kind of sections that I felt you could find before. But anyway, before the app kind of, you know, went downhill for me personally, I did go on there once and I asked for recommendations specifically for books that were uplifting and happy, because I had like gotten in my head, like, or just seen through my reading taste, that I was going for a very specific type of book, and in a lot of ways I still do, but I wanted something that was, I didn't want to like, I wanted to get outside of this thing what I was doing, which I was equating like this pain to like deepness, like the more painful the more profound, in a way. I don't believe that, and I really wanted to hear what other people did, and I got so many recommendations on that question. And if anybody wants to like hear what people said, I will, like, you just say something in the comments or something and I'll like send it to you or something if you want to just see what other people said. But I was really interested in like picking up some of those things because I wanted like this feel-good vibes from like books. And so anyway, kind of in the line of thought that I started off my last video in, I was thinking about like how this thing that like just is like so passionate for me and like so it for me, and like I liked to use the term escapism, as in like me reading. Like, why was I not choosing to escape to places that were better? Like, this is like I read primarily fiction. Literally, the sky's the limit, y'all. Authors and readers can craft their own anything. Like, we can go anywhere, we can do anything, we can see anything, we can create anything. And why are like my top 10 books, like why are 9 out of 10 of them like so tragic? You know what I'm saying? Or just have a very like dark or like tragic theme running through them. And I think it's a very simple answer, to be honest, but also at the same time not. And so, biting off of Christian's comment, again, you can go like see like his full comment on my last video. He's more articulate than me, for sure. But basically, he was saying it's kind of hard because you kind of get caught up in the word escapism, but there's really kind of like two versions of what that word even means. And I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but basically he was like, one version of escapism leads to the belief of a falsehood about the world we live in, and the other form of escapism is one that exposes the truth of the world we live in, which was such a good thought. Thank you, Christian. And I guess the first type of escapism he equated to people who like abuse drugs and alcohol. Like, that's one version of that, where they're just, it's like this wanting to be like high off of something, wanting to feel like this ineffable like euphoria. And this other form of escapism, which I'm not saying drugs and alcohol is the only way to achieve that. I am really racking my brain for like moments where escapism is so like pure, and I think there's many good versions of that. Like, outside of like abusing drugs or alcohol. And like I can think of like being in like nature, or books is one, but it's like it's more twisted than that, you know what I'm saying? And even when we're reading a book, I feel like so many, I mean, just the nature of books to begin with, like there has to be some type of conflict, right? There has to be something that you're fighting for. So I think that already is going to set off than just reading something that's pure bliss. You know what I'm saying? And what could you read that would be pure bliss, that could really bring you in like that? I mean, I think the simple like side of it is that human history and the lives of humans are very sad and very tragic, and I think right now, like that's just the core of the reality we live in, and that it's hard, it beats you down, suffering is inevitable. Like I'm not trying to even be like pessimistic right now. I just think that's just the fact of it. And so all of the like a big majority of the art that we produce is like paying homage to that core state of where what it means to be human. I don't know. I'm just once again rambling. I truly believe that between joy and pain, joy is the more profound of the two. And I don't know, I'm glad that I've recognized that, because I feel like when I was younger, especially my teenage years, I'm 23 right now. I don't know. We all will always have growing up to do. But especially like in the throes of like my teenage years, I was going through it, and I really don't think I ever really believed that joy was the more profound of the two, you know. I just thought there's no way it could be. But now I totally believe that, and I think that it's the more profound of the two. It's just the one that's less relatable. Gosh, I remember reading like Fernando Pessoa for the first time as like a 17-year-old, and I swear there was no book of butterflies and rainbows that could have surpassed that deep feeling of like satisfaction and feeling like I was understood than Pessoa like writing about how sad stuff was. Like there's nothing that could have like surpassed that. So it's just interesting to think about. I think it's most apparent in children's literature, the kind of like beauty of life type of stuff, and I absolutely love that. I really want to read more children's literature. I think I want to make a whole video about children's literature, because I think it's such a special part of like the literary world, and I does not like get any hype on BookTube or anything like that. And children's literature should really truly not just be for children. Like there's like this inherent joy that's part of it, and I just think it's so special, and I'm really recognizing that more lately, and I really want to like delve into that kind of side of things. Like I just want to. I think that there's also this like second kind of side to it, and that kind of has to do with like that scene that I was talking about in Brothers Karamazov, where Alyosha says he wants to suffer too. I don't know if it's just me, but sometimes like I feel like I have this kind of universal version of like survivor's guilt, where I feel like maybe I've escaped a lot of things. Like there's like so many things that I've escaped. That other people have not escaped in life, you know. There's no shortage of like atrocities to go around. And part of me, and I really was into this in my teenage years, like I'm telling you, it's like this masochistic like tendency that like Alyosha, I wanted to suffer too. So I went through this phase when I was younger where like I was reading like a lot of like black pain literature, and it really did like tear me down after a while. And I just felt like there was this obligation that since I didn't have to live through it myself, I at least need to experience it in whatever way I could. And through a very light version of it would be like reading it and experiencing it. And I felt like it was like my obligation to do this. I no longer subscribe to this mindset because it's very toxic, and I do believe there's some truth in it, but it's not like conducive to just purposely try to make yourself suffer in some kind of idea that's going to make amends for the horrible things that happened to other people. So I definitely dose myself out with that kind of stuff as opposed to like really delving into it like I did before. But I also felt like, and I still do feel like there's this obligation to at least know certain things that are going on in the world, or certain things that have happened, and to hear people out, to hear other people's accounts. And it does build empathy, and that's one of the big things about it. And I just think there's this line between like building empathy and then like overloading yourself with sadness, which is like not conducive and not helpful to anybody if you just overload yourself with all this stuff. And I'm glad that I've like moved on from thinking that I needed to like consume the most thematically like horrific stuff going on in different countries and certain people in certain time periods, because I just needed to do that because I didn't have to live it, and now I have to take on some of it. And I'm just glad I don't think like that anymore. I think that we read what we relate to, and a lot of the times that's sad stuff. And there's something kind of beautiful in that. I mean, have you ever read a book and you're just like, dang, I didn't know somebody else thought that too. It's like, it's kind of like a blind thought, you know what I'm saying? It's like, wow, I'm not the only one. It's like obviously you're not, right? You think that's so obvious, but it's not. It's really not when you're like going through stuff in life. And it's like so beautiful and so powerful to be able to like pick up a book and read from someone, maybe someone born way before you, someone who's born on a different side of the world, and y'all can relate. Like it's like this crazy type of energy, and I will always stand by that. And I'm so much more interested as I just get older in the transmission of joy, as well as like this part where you could relate to other people's struggles. I want to also relate to other people's joy, and I'm looking for more literature like that. Like I'm actively doing that, and yeah, I'm gonna look back at that recommendation from Likewise. Like if anyone wants it, see what other people thought was like joyful, upbeat stuff that was also profound to them, I will send you the list. And so I think that's the simple version of it, but I think it's obviously more nuanced than that. And I really am trying to think of like literature that can really do that. And I think like poetry is the one that's gotten me the most, because it's hard to really rack my brain for like a novel that is blissful that I love. But I can definitely like tap into poetry that is blissful that I love. And Walt Whitman is one of those authors, and I remember talking about that in my like poetry recommendations video that I made like a really long time ago. I had that experience when I read Walden last year by Henry David Thoreau, which was like this beautiful, it felt like a portal into like a beautiful place just surrounded by nature. And wow, that it felt so good. Like what other pieces of literature like transmit joy? I think of like certain books in the Bible. Psalms has some beautiful, like almost like ethereal scenes and images and like paradisiac visions of the earth that are also like transmit joy. It's just not a majority of what I find myself reading and the majority of what I've related to and kind of like latched onto, because that's just not the baseline feeling of the human experience. Yeah, I mean, life is a nuanced thing, and there's a lot of different facets to it. And when it comes to literature, I just want to find that happy medium of both. I want every piece of the literary world. Like, I truly do, and I don't want to be like skimping myself out on all these amazing discoveries because I have a certain perception about what is profound and what is not. And there's nothing that is less true about joy that is more true about pain. But anyway, yeah, Miles, if you're watching this, I think I'm gonna have a lot to say about Kafka on the Shore. I'm really liking it so far, but a couple things are bugging me, which you kind of mentioned. We're kind of on the same wave there, brother. Anyway, as always, happy reading, losers.